When Joseph interpreted the dreams of Pharaoh's cupbearer, he asked him to plead with Pharaoh to release him because he was in prison as an innocent man. But when the cupbearer returned to his job, he forgot all about Joseph. Poor Joseph. 2 years went by and Joseph remained in prison. One night, Pharaoh had a dream. He was standing by the Nile River when 7 fat cows came up out of the water and began to feed on the grass. Then 7 very thin and bony cows came out of the river Nile and stood by the other cows on the riverbank. In Pharaoh's dream, the thin cows ate up the fat cows. Pharaoh woke up, then went back to sleep again. He had another dream. He saw 7 heads of grain, full and ripe, growing on one stalk. Then 7 other heads of grain sprouted. They were thin and scorched by the desert wind. These thin heads of grain swallowed the full ones. The king was so disturbed by his dreams, the next morning he sent for all the magicians and wise men of Egypt. He told them his dreams, but no one could explain them to him. Then the cupbearer remembered Joseph in prison. He explained to Pharaoh, "When I was in prison, a young Hebrew interpreted my dream, and things turned out just as he said." The king sent for Joseph, and he was immediately brought out of the prison. But he was a bit smelly, and his hair was very long. After he had shaved and changed his clothes, he was brought to see Pharaoh. "I have had dreams that no one can explain," Pharaoh told Joseph. "I have been told that you can interpret dreams." "I cannot interpret dreams," Joseph replied, "but God can." Pharaoh told Joseph his dreams. "I was standing on the bank of the river Nile when 7 fat cows came up out of the river and began feeding on the grass. Then 7 very thin cows, the poorest I have ever seen in Egypt, came out of the river and ate up the fat cows. But the thin cows did not look any better. In another dream, I saw 7 heads of grain which were full and ripe growing on one stalk. Then 7 heads of thin, scorched grain swallowed the full ones. I told the dreams to the magicians, but none of them could explain them to me." "The 2 dreams mean the same thing," Joseph explained. "God has told you what he is going to do. The 7 fat cows are 7 years, and the 7 full heads of grain are also 7 years. There will be 7 years of great plenty in all of Egypt. The 7 thin cows and the 7 thin heads of grain are 7 years that will follow. These will be 7 years of a terrible famine that will ruin the country. The repetition of your dream means that the matter is fixed by God and that he will make it happen very soon. You must choose a man with wisdom and put him in charge of the country. During the 7 years of plenty, take 1/5 of the crops and store the grain in cities under guard. During the 7 years of famine, you can then use the stored grain so people will not starve." Pharaoh and his officials liked this plan. "We will never find a wiser man than Joseph, a man who has God's spirit in him," Pharaoh concluded. Pharaoh removed from his finger the ring engraved with the royal seal and put it on Joseph's finger. Joseph was granted authority as the second most powerful man in the kingdom. He was given a fine linen robe, a gold chain, and a royal chariot. Pharaoh also gave Joseph the Egyptian name Zaphenath-Paneah, and a wife, Asenath. Joseph was now 30 years old, with the task of gathering and storing grain in the 7 years of plenty.